I've worked in a morgue for 7 years. The body I'm preparing for autopsy has my face. The body bag arrived at County Memorial's morgue at 2:43 a.m., which was standard for traffic fatalities. I was alone on night shift, which was also standard for Monday mornings when the weekend carnage got processed. What wasn't standard was unzipping the bag and seeing my own face staring back at me, mouth slightly open, eyes fixed in that blank expression every corpse wears. I stepped back so fast my hip hit the autopsy table behind me, and I stood there for a full minute just trying to process what I was seeing. The deceased male had my exact face structure, my nose that had been broken twice playing hockey in college, my distinctive scar through my left eyebrow from a childhood accident with a treehouse nail. Even the hairline matched perfectly, the same slight recession at the temples that I'd started noticing when I turned 30. My hands were shaking when I pulled the sheet down further and saw the body was my height. My build had the same broad shoulders and narrow waist that made buying suits difficult. The only visible difference was a massive head trauma on the right side where the skull had been crushed, presumably from the vehicular impact that killed him. I grabbed my phone and took photos from multiple angles before my training kicked back in, and I checked the toe tag. John Doe, male, approximately 35 years old, found at the intersection of Maple and 5th. No identification, no witnesses. The police report noted that a street camera had malfunctioned the night before, so there was no footage of the actual accident. I needed to call someone, but who? My supervisor, Dr. Ashworth, wouldn't be in until 8. The police had already logged the body and left, and what would I even say that wouldn't sound insane? I forced myself to follow protocol and began the intake examination, documenting every detail with clinical precision, even though my mind was racing. The body's fingerprints didn't match mine. I checked that immediately by comparing them to my own prints in the employee database. The dental structure looked similar, but I'd need x-rays to confirm if it was identical. No identifying marks except for one detail that made my stomach turn over. This corpse had the exact same appendectomy scar I'd gotten when I was 16. Same location on the lower right abdomen, same length and angle. Appendectomy scars vary significantly based on the surgeon's technique in the patient's healing. There's no way two people would have identical scars unless they'd had the same surgeon performing the same procedure in the same way. I measured the scar with calipers and photographed it next to a ruler, then pulled up my shirt and measured my own scar, identical within a millimeter. I checked the body's hands and found calluses in the exact pattern mine had developed from years of working with autopsy tools and lifting bodies. The calluses on a person's hands are as unique as fingerprints, shaped by their specific occupation and habits. This wasn't just someone who looked similar to me. This was someone whose body had developed identical wear patterns, identical injury history, identical physical characteristics, down to details that couldn't be coincidental. I sat down on the stool by the examination table and tried to think rationally. There were only a few explanations, and none of them made sense. Identical twin I didn't know about? Impossible. My mother would have mentioned giving birth to twins. Elaborate plastic surgery to look like me. Why would anyone do that? And how would they replicate surgical scars and callus patterns? My phone buzzed with a text from my girlfriend, Rachel, asking if I was still coming to her place after my shift. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back that something had come up at work and I'd call her later. How could I explain this? How could I tell anyone that there was a corpse in my morgue that appeared to be my physical duplicate? I took blood samples and sent them to the lab with a rush order, claiming it was a potential homicide that needed priority processing. The lab tech on duty was someone I'd worked with for years, and she didn't question my request. Then I started going through the police report more carefully, looking for details that might explain how this John Doe had ended up dead at an intersection with no witnesses and no identification. The responding officer's notes were sparse. Body found by a street cleaner at 5:17 a.m. Apparent vehicular strike, extensive head trauma, no personal effects found at scene. That last part bothered me. Most people carry something, a wallet, keys, phone. This John Doe had nothing, which suggested either a robbery or someone had deliberately stripped him of identification. I called the precinct and asked to speak to the officer who'd filed the report. Officer Dennison answered after 3 rings, sounding tired and irritated at being bothered about a routine John Doe case. I identified myself as the morgue technician handling the autopsy and asked if there was any additional information not in the written report. Dennison said the scene was clean, too clean. No skid marks from a vehicle breaking, no debris except the body itself, no blood trail suggesting the victim had been moved. Honestly, it looked staged, Dennison said, but without any evidence of foul play beyond the head trauma. We had to log it as a traffic accident and move on. We don't have the resources to investigate every suspicious death. And that's when things took a turn I never expected. To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.